Welcome to Speaking of Talking. Hi, I'm Jenni Steck, voice and speech coach and total voice nerd, here to explore all the ways our voices shape how we connect, lead, and show up in the world. Each week, we'll chat with inspiring leaders, speakers, and experts from all kinds of industries. People who use their voices to move audiences, rally teams, and make an impact. From polished political speeches to spontaneous sideline interviews, we'll break down what works, what doesn't, and why it matters. At Jenni Steck Voice and Speech, we've spent the last decade coaching Fortune 500 executives, broadcasters from CNN, ESPN, CBS News, ABC News, and even prepping Hall of Fame speeches for the NFL and Major League Baseball. And now, I get to bring those conversations and insights straight to you. So if you love talking about talking, you're in the right place. And be sure to subscribe to Speaking of Talking wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And check the show notes for helpful tips and tools. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get talking. Welcome back, everyone. Today's episode is packed with insight, not just for writers, but for anyone who needs to pitch an idea, tell a compelling story, or build a persuasive message. My guest is Samantha McIntyre. She's a television writer and screenwriter whose credits include the Netflix film Unicorn Store, as well as People of Earth and Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. She shares what it takes to pitch a TV show in Hollywood, but as you'll hear, the skills she uses are just as relevant in the boardroom, the Zoom room, or any room where you're trying to get someone to say yes. We talk about how to sound confident even when you're nervous, how to prepare for tough questions, and why storytelling matters, whether you're selling a script or a strategy. Let's get talking.
I don't like my bangs.
They look awesome.
I need to reschedule. I don't like my bangs. No one's seeing this, right?
That's right. Just us.
Okay.
We just get the privilege of the video. So my makeup is for naught.
Yeah. No, it's for me and I love it.
Okay, good. So really, why I brought you on, we talked about doing this podcast and I heard you telling a story about how you practice your pitches. So can you just introduce yourself? Tell me what you do.
Yes. My name is Samantha McIntyre and I'm a television writer and screenwriter, though mostly make my living through writing for television. My day-to-day existence is usually either I'm on staff of a television show, usually comedies, or if I'm not currently on staff of a show, then I am doing a lot of pitching, trying to sell a TV show, trying to sell a script, sell a pilot.
If you're working on a show that you've been brought on to write for the creation of somebody else, do you have time to create your own work, or is that something you do when you are on hiatus?
It kind of is up to you. Sometimes you could be hired on a show in which your contract is so exclusive to that show, you're not technically allowed to sell. It could be the case that you wouldn't be allowed to sell some things maybe in your first year, especially if you were a lower level writer. They might say you can't pitch or sell anything while you're in the writer's room. But I'm considered an upper level writer now, and usually I could. It's a little trickier. Oh, I don't mean to brag, but it's a little bit of a faux pas. Like, not a faux pas. I guess it really depends on your showrunner and the show you're on, because you probably have to ask for like an hour or two off, if you're going to be pitching during the time that you're in the writer's room. Now, whether you personally want to be working on a pitch or your own show idea in your free time, that's up to you. I find it pretty difficult on shows. It depends. Some shows I've been on, been very busy. It's longer than a 9-to-5 job and you don't really want to go home and then like do more of that. But I've been on shows that were pretty chill where we did have a lot of free time. It was fun to feel like I have my own thing that I can work on. If I don't get to do all the ideas in this other person's show, and I'm feeling not as creatively fulfilled on someone else's show, at least I have my own project that when I have a moment here or there, I could tinker on it, you know? So sometimes it is fun to have like your own project on the sidelines. But right now I'm not on a show. So I'm like deep in development and coming up with ideas and meeting with producers and talking about ideas, pitching ideas. It's a lot of thinking. I'm in the thinking phase right now.
So, how do you log ideas? Because I'm sure if you're working on somebody else's show, ideas come to you all the time. Do you have a place like a spreadsheet where you log these ideas that you want to revisit later?
I do. I actually have probably multiple notes on my notes app on my phone because if I'm just out and about, for example, was at WonderCon this past weekend in Anaheim. We went to this panel about Disney bounding, and this one woman on the panel talked about how she Disney bounded as a trash can, as a Disneyland trash can. And that cracked me up so much. I immediately opened my notes app on my phone, and I wrote like woman Disney bounds as trash can. Not because I was like, this is a TV show, but I was like, oh, I'm putting that in a script somewhere. That's just such a funny character description that maybe there's a character who's super into Disney bounding and she dresses up as a trash can. So I always have my phone nearby if I just like something sparks. But I literally have a note in my phone called TV show ideas. So if it's like, oh, that's a whole show, I'll type it in there. And then I have documents on my computer too. And I have opened old ones up. Sometimes I know exactly what I want to work on next, but sometimes I don't know. And I open up the document on my computer and I'm like, oh, there was a whole thing I'd thought about doing 10 years ago and I never pitched it. Maybe I'll work on it now, you know?
So, we've been throwing this word around pitch. I think most people get the idea of what it is, but can you describe what it is?
What
And what are the steps to pitching a TV show?
Well, there are a million steps and it takes a million years. Some of that is just the current climate right now of television and Hollywood and everything being really slow. But the basic timeline would be me telling my agent or manager, oh my gosh, I have this amazing idea for a show. They want to know what the idea is, but maybe I don't have the full pitch yet. So I might write a one-page description. This is the world of the show, and this is what it's about, and this is why I think it would be a good idea. And here's like some of the characters, and here's what would happen in the pilot. And it's just a one-page thing, and I'm only showing that to my reps so they get what the idea is, and so they can start thinking about who are the right producers that I could pitch this to. So in an ideal situation, they would say, oh, we love it. So-and-so is looking for something like this. I would go off and I would write this pitch out. I write it out like a full script I usually work in half-hour comedy. So the whole entire pitch in a dream world would be like 20 minutes or less. It's hard to get it in the 20 minutes though, because they really want to know so much. There's like so much information. You know, they want to know what would happen in season 2. And then that's like, well, that could be a whole other 20-minute conversation. But ideally, I would write out this whole 20-minute pitch. I would either show it to my agents or do it for them over Zoom. I would like somewhat perform it for them. I write it out as a script. Not every TV writer does that, but I'm too nervous that I'm going to forget something. And so I like to have it all written out.
So you basically write out a script for yourself for the pitch.
Yes. Yeah. Most of the pitches now, ever since COVID, are happening over Zoom, and that has maintained. But I think everyone has realized this is really easy. This is really great. Let's keep it going. So because you're pitching over Zoom, it's so great because I literally have my script up on the screen.
I was going to ask that. So how do you practice it? How do you present it in a way that doesn't sound like you're reading?
Well, I don't want to brag, but I have an MFA in acting.
Yes.
No, I did move to LA to become an actor. Did not end up becoming like, you know, professional actor, even though I attempted it, tried it for many years, did a lot of theater. But anyway, I think that's just a skill that people can either naturally have or you could work on it to have, but I am very much trying to read my script as if I'm having that thought for the first time. I'm almost, sometimes I'm even pausing, I'm searching for the right word, and then it's going to feel funny when this happens and that happens, but it's just written out. Like I'm faking, I'm trying to make it look natural. I'm trying to make it look like I'm not reading it. Maybe they can tell I'm reading it. I don't know. But the performance of it, I don't want it to sound like I'm reading it. When we had to do pitches in person, I would bring the printed out pitch papers. I would have them in front of me. And in that case, much like with an audition, like if you were reading sides for an actor, I always thought it was good to have it mostly memorized, but you would hold it in your hand in case you needed to look at it. And that's what I would do when I was in person, pre-COVID. I would have it as memorized as I possibly could, but I also had it in front of me. Now, I will say, I've worked on shows and 4 shows where the showrunner was telling us the story of how he sold the show that we're all working on together right now. And in one case, he said he printed out his pages and he literally just read them in person, like in front of the person. It was like, this is a show about this, and I want to do this show because of this reason, and this is what it's going to explore, and these are the themes, and here's all the characters, and here's what's going to happen in the first episode, and here's what's going to happen in the first season. And he literally just read it like he was reading a book to a room full of school children. And if they like the idea, then they don't care. It's like if the idea is good enough, they're not really going to care. Okay, he didn't have it memorized. If they like the idea enough, then how you did it won't matter in the end of the day.
Have you heard of someone who had a great story but bombed the pitch? Like, how do you bomb the pitch?
It's so hard to know what really happens because it's so hard to sell something, especially now that I hear, I have friends every day who are pitching things and they didn't sell the thing. And, you get the feedback you're getting from your agent. If you do get feedback, it's like, oh, it's usually some version of, they said you were absolutely wonderful. They love you. They'd love to work with you. It's just, they have something very similar, in the pipeline, or they're not looking to do like sci-fi. And that maybe had a little too much science fiction for them. Or they really are only focusing on like broad appeal, family, multicam sitcoms. And that's like not what you pitch them. And so it would have been good to know that beforehand. Usually you get like a nice pass that doesn't really tell you. If what you're saying is like you bombed the pitch, like your delivery was terrible and you were stumbling over your words in that way, I don't think you would know. I mean, maybe you'd know in your heart, because you would be like, I lost my place and I couldn't think of what to say. And that does happen. And I think that is actually a skill that after you pitch a whole lot, you can really work on, which is the scariest part of the pitch is at the end, they can ask questions. They can ask any question they have. And I'm not going to have those answers written down, right? Like I can't memorize that. I don't know what they're going to ask. So over time, I've done it enough that I've noticed a pattern. There's certain questions that most of them do ask. So I do prepare that. I think to myself, if they ask me, what do I think is like the biggest theme of this show? I'm ready. I've thought about the theme and I've written it out. And if it wasn't already in my main pitch, underneath the pitch, I will write out questions I think they'll ask. I'll write the answer that I would like to give. If I'm totally stumped and they ask, we noticed this interesting character, and you hadn't thought about the character at all. It was like you just put in the name, like the next door neighbor, Mary. And they're like, we're really interested in Mary. Like, what's she about? Like, that was so interesting when she showed up. And you're thinking like, shit, I didn't even Mary's not even important. My way to handle that is to say, oh my gosh, wow, that's such a great question. Like, I'll tell them that's a really great question. And I'll just admit, I'll be like, I hadn't really gone deep on Mary, but it is something I've been thinking about. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's making me realize I really want to dig into her backstory, and maybe it would be fun that she was in witness protection. But the thing that they love is you're making it seem like they gave you that. It's so great that you asked me that, because you're making me think that Mary should be more important. And maybe I should make her, like she's a spy, or we find out this secret about her, and you're like complimenting their input. Because in the best case scenario, this production company that you're pitching to would say, yes, we love this project. We want to attach to your project so that me and the production company can then go to a studio and try to sell it. So if these are the people that you end up working with, they're going to be giving you notes. They're going to be giving you thoughts. You're going to be working with them one-on-one forever. So if they bring up something you hadn't thought of and you compliment them, oh my God, I didn't even think about that, but that's actually amazing. Though usually I say, I have been thinking about that a little bit, and I haven't gone down that road like too far, but like the fact that you're bringing it up, I love that. And that makes me think I should do something with that, kind of talk my way around it. But like, if you don't have the answer, I feel like it's okay to be like, ooh, that's really good. You know what? I want to think about that. Like, that's a super awesome question. And I definitely was like focusing on like the main character, but Mary's journey would be a really cool thing to get into.
I really want to meet Mary now.
Yeah, who's Mary? What is the show? I should have come up with a better fake show that we could be discussing me pitching, because I don't know what this is. I feel like I mentioned Mary. I mentioned witness protection.
I know. I'm really intrigued.
Sci-fi? Like, what is it?
Is she like an undercover alien spy?
I don't know. She's just the next door neighbor.
Or is she?
Is she? Or is she?
So you mentioned something that I think is brilliant, which is going into it with the idea that ultimately you're building a relationship with these people because you're thinking already about what would it be like to work with them. And I want them to want to work with me. So you would never have them ask you a question about Mary and be like, why are you talking about Mary? Mary's like a shit character. I would never give her another thought. Like you wouldn't push back too hard in the pitch, or would you?
I don't think so. I mean, the biggest thing is you want them to like the idea. The details are not so important because they could like the idea and say, but we have some notes on it, and then you guys can work together. You want them to like the big picture idea, and you want them to like you, because this is the same when you're trying to get a job staffing on a TV show. They've already read a sample of your writing. They like your writing. By the time you're having the meeting where you're meeting the showrunner, it's really to be like, do I like this person enough to spend time with them in a writer's room all day? There are some big personalities in Hollywood. You hear about them with actors, maybe more than writers, but there are big personalities writers wise as well. And they just want to see that you're like not a crazy person, a good collaborator, a good listener. You're open to hearing feedback, open to notes. You're able to give pitches in the room or give your own ideas and be very collaborative. And so that's what they're really looking for.
It's funny, as you're talking about this, I work with a lot of business people. They're trying to do something similar. They're trying to build a relationship with a potential client. And really, it's all sales in the end. So it's almost like you're selling your idea, you're selling yourself. I mean, sales pitch, it's what it is, right?
It absolutely is, because the best case scenario is I'm going to pitch the show to a studio that's going to make me an offer for me to write the pilot. So I'm talking a lot about like this first step where I'm pitching to like the production company, and I'm pitching to maybe 10 of them. The same pitch I'm doing to 10 different production companies, seeing who wants to work with me and who do I want to work with. Ideally, I would have multiple people tell my agent we want to attach. And now I'm choosing, you know what? I really vibed with that lady there and I want to do it with that company. And then we're going to go to a studio together and we're going to pitch the show. And if it sells, like you're saying, absolutely, it's a sales pitch, because then I get a nice check I can live off for the year and I get health insurance. Whether it moves on or not, I'm going to get paid for that script, whether we make the pilot, whether it gets a series order. And, I've sold pilots and none of them have become TV shows. So that is obviously a very common outcome, but it's still a great outcome because it means that you've sold something and you've made money and you can buy groceries.
That is important.
Yes.
When you are writing for a position on somebody else's show, can you talk about how you prepare for that? Do you target shows that you want to write for, and you tell your agent, or do you get called into, hey, they like your stuff, they want to sample? Do you research the show? Like, do you go back and watch every episode of every show? How do you prepare for that? That's different than you've created that you have your baby you're selling.
You basically try to do as much research as humanly possible before that meeting. And so if it's an existing show, your agent will call you and say, hey, you have a meeting on this show. You're going to meet with the showrunner, and it's for season 2 of their show. And you're like, great, because now I can go watch all of season 1 and I can tell them it's my favorite show. I've seen every episode. I'm obsessed with the show. In the early days of my career, I was probably mostly researching the show so I could talk about the show. I might come in with some pitches for like episode ideas. Sometimes I've had that directly asked me to my face, do you have episode ideas? And it's like, oh shit, I'm so glad I did, because for me, it would have been hard to just think of that in a second. Again, you're thinking through, what could they ask me? What if they want to know? And they wouldn't say, what are your episode ideas? It wouldn't be like that. It would be disguised. They would say, oh, it's so great hearing you're a fan of season 1. When that big cliffhanger happened at the end of the season, like, where did you see it going? Are there things that you're hoping to see more of? And that's where you would be like, oh my gosh, yes, I really see this character. I'm like praying this character does this in season 2, or it'd be so fun if we explored this little story area in season 2, and then this happened and this happened. It's like your chance to show them that you would be good in the writer's room, because you want to give the vibe that you are filled with so many ideas. I have ideas left and right. And if you put me in that writer's room, I'm going to help you by pitching so many helpful ideas. You don't have to use them all, but like, here I am giving you all of these things. So in the early days, it was like research the show as much as possible. I still do that, but now I do one more thing, which is I research the showrunner as much as humanly possible. Start with your agents and be like, do you know who that person is? Do you know what their reputation is? And if they're like, oh, he's great, he's a great guy, that is still not enough information. So you need to just ask around anyone you can find, like, because a lot of my friends are TV writers. I usually know someone, or I know someone who knows someone that's worked for that person. And then that's where you get the real dirt. And I've lucked out. Like, I've had really good experiences, but there are a lot of horror stories that you'll hear of toxic writers' rooms. And I don't want to be in a toxic writer's room. So even if it was a dream job on a dream show, if I got wind that the showrunner was a nightmare, I probably wouldn't want that job. I might take the meeting, but chances are, if like the word on the street was this person's awful, like I'm not going to do it.
It's so interesting to hear how it all works, all the shenanigans and the thought you have to put into preparation. When you're in the writer's room, can you talk about, are you nervous when you go into the writer's room? Are you assigned an episode? All I can really reference is 30 Rock, where they're like sitting around in the writer's room.
Yeah.
They are all throwing out ideas for an episodic show. I imagine someone's in charge of an episode, or do you have sessions where you're also all tossing out ideas?
Definitely different shows work in different ways. Even my husband, who's a TV writer, like, he'll describe the shows he's on and how they work. And it's very different from rooms I've been in. I've been in a lot of what I would think of as a traditional comedy room, where there's a big group of people sitting around a table and literally all pitching on one thing. You will be assigned an episode eventually, but like at the beginning of the season, day 1, probably the showrunner is going to want to talk big picture. Let's just talk about the whole season. It's very different if it's a new show or if it's a returning show, because if it's a new show, none of the writers know anything and the showrunner knows all of it.
Can you explain showrunner?
So showrunner is just a TV writer, but it's usually, they're the head writer. They're the person in charge of the writer's room. They're in charge of the whole show, really. That's why they call it showrunner. They have so many producing responsibilities in addition to the writing responsibilities. Often the showrunner is the creator of the show, but not always. If like a young, 21-year-old sold a TV show, and it's their first thing they've ever sold, but it was like the best script HBO had ever read, and they were like, we're going to make this a show. They might not want that person to be the showrunner if they've never worked in television before, they've never been in a writer's room before. So they might pair that person with a more experienced showrunner who's like done that before. So sometimes the showrunner is the creator of the show. And if it's a brand new show and they've created it, they've sold their vision, and now they have new writers coming in day one. They have to get everybody up to speed with the whole vision, right? Like they need to spend a lot of time explaining, here's what I'm thinking. They're probably doing a version of the pitch that they did to sell the show. They're probably doing that for the writers, just so you can know, like, here's all the characters. Here's what the arc of season one is going to be. The best part of now having the writer's room is you get help figuring all that out. You're kind of bullshitting a little bit in the pitch. You're making it sound like I have fully thought out all 8 episodes of season one, and here's what all 8 episodes of season 2 will be. And all it takes is one writer in the room being like, but what if you did this in episode 3? And you're like, oh, wow, that's actually amazing. Yes, let's do that. And that changes all the stuff you promised in your pitch, right? And that's fine. Like all you have to do is just sell it. And then you can kind of make changes as you need to go. But at the beginning of the writer's room process, it's just a lot of big picture talk about the show in general, the season, where we want to go. And then in some rooms I've been in, we start mapping out. If we know there's 8 episodes, well, here's a big thing we know is going to happen in the middle of the season. And then that person's going to get murdered in the last episode. And we know that's going to happen. And you're yeah. Mary knows what she did. Okay. She's not going to survive it. And it's her fault. She done. You're done, as my teenager says. But yeah, at some point when you start, and then you get into the really specifics. You're like, okay, let's figure out episode 1. Probably was the pilot, and it's probably already been written. Maybe it's already been shot. And then they decided to pick up the show to series. So now the whole writer's room is like, what happens next? We're as a group, we're all going to discuss episode 2. Everybody's pitching ideas on episode 2. Ooh, what if we did this? What if we did that? We're writing them up on like a whiteboard, writing out all the ideas. And then at some point, typically the showrunner will assign that episode to someone in the room. Usually the shows I've been on, they somewhat go in order of seniority. Like the upper level writers will often be assigned like the second episode, and then you'll kind of go down the tier of writers until you get to like a first time staff writer will probably get one of the later episodes, which is great because it's giving that person time to like learn and be in the room and sort of see how the whole process works. And sometimes it could be, they don't go in order. It could be, you had such an awesome pitch for episode 2 that the showrunner's like, hey, Samantha, I think you should take this one. Because like you pitched the whole big thing that everybody loved. And so they'll be like, you take this episode. But even though it's your episode and you know you'll be writing it, the rooms I've been in have still been super collaborative as we're all helping break that episode. We're all helping figure out what's happening in, the beginning, the middle, the end. We're writing out ideas for scenes even. Like, okay, the first scene is going to be in the house, and then this is going to happen. And the second scene is going to be out on the street, and then this is going to happen. And then at some point, the assigned writer of that episode will take all of those ideas away and go write an outline. That will be approved, and then you will write the script. And then that will be approved, and then hopefully they film it and it's on TV. And then you win a Golden Globe. Yeah.
I know I have talked to you about your husband being on set because he has to travel sometimes out of the country for the show.
Yes.
Is that your experience for most shows? Is the writer of the episode on set?
That's a complicated question now because that is sort of the ideal scenario, because that is how younger writers learn how to produce their episodes. And that is the producing experience that you need so that by the time you are experienced enough that you've sold your own pitch and you've made your own show and you are made showrunner, now you know how to produce your show. Because in the best case scenario, when you were moving up the ranks in the writer's room, you were getting to produce your episodes on location, wherever that may be. But it often doesn't work out that way. Sometimes the studios say that they don't have enough money to send the writers. One way that happens is that the whole writer's room might happen and finish start and finish before production begins. So like if I'm hired on a 20-week writer's room and we wrote 8 or 10 episodes, and then the writer's room ends and I'm not being paid anymore because I'm only getting paid during those 20 weeks. Now they're months later, they're going to go film all those scripts in, like, let's just say New Zealand, and they have the showrunner there on set. They don't want to go back and pay the writers to go to New Zealand and produce their episodes. So it's becoming less common, and it's a big problem. And it was a big issue that was brought up in this last writer's strike that people wanted to address, because we feel that we're losing institutional knowledge. We're having a whole crop of writers moving up the ranks who have never produced their episodes. And it depends. Like if you work on a multicam sitcom that shoots on a stage in Los Angeles, which my first 2 jobs were like that, well, then of course I'm going to set every day and I'm watching the rehearsals and I'm there on the tape night when they're shooting in front of a live audience. And I've worked on a show that shot in Los Angeles. So that was super easy. Like if it was your episode, you literally just drive to Burbank for the day or wherever we were shooting on location. I've worked on a show that shot in Vancouver, and a lot of stuff films in Canada. And we absolutely did go to set for our own episodes on that up until COVID. And then when COVID happened, we were not going, and just our showrunner was going. And I'm trying to think if I've ever been on a show where I didn't ever get to go. Oh, yeah. I worked on a show called People of Earth that filmed in Canada, and none of the writers, including the showrunner, really went up there. And it was happening during the writer's room. So that was why the showrunner couldn't be there, because he would be running the room. So it really depends on the show and how cheap the studio is.
What is the purpose of, and I mean, yes, there's that knowledge that the writer gains, but what's the benefit for the show of having the writer there? Do they make dialogue changes sometimes based on the situation? Is it like a union lighting person? Like you can't have other people just write the lines. You have to have one of the writers. What's the
biggest purpose would be to answer questions about the script. And hopefully you are acting as the voice. If you're not the showrunner yourself, that you are the voice of the showrunner. You were there in the room when the episode was being worked on in detail. And so if they have a question about, well, what was the purpose of this, or why do we need this? You know very well because you worked on it and you were there, and you're like, oh, well, the reason we did that is. But on a more practical, and you are correct, a lot of times there's line changes need to be made in the moment. This comes up actually more for my husband, Wade, who works on FBI International. It's a procedural show. They often get into a situation where they need to now film this one scene. He'd written it, it was in a room, but they need to do it in a stairwell on the day because they don't have time to go to another location. So can we just do it here? So he might need to really quick tweak the scene a little bit so it could take place in the set that they need to now put it in. Now, my background is mostly in comedy, and the number one reason we want to be there is for punching up jokes. And that's very different depending. Some shows don't do that, and some shows heavily do that, where you could, like, if you're there on set in the moment and you think of a funnier version or an alternate take, and obviously working with the director, because you don't want to like step on the director's toes and just go up to the actor and say, what if you said this? But if your showrunner is on board with pitches, comedy pitches, and the director is amenable, then that is like an important reason why you would be there. Obviously very different on a multicam show where you're filming in front of a live studio audience. That's 100% what you're doing. That's literally the whole writing staff is there. If you've ever gone to a live taping, you will see when they finish a scene, you will see all the writers huddle up like football style, and everyone has their script and a pencil, and they're literally like, what if we're pitching each other jokes, and then the showrunner will be like, yeah, that one. And then they'll go do another take with that joke. So writers maybe have a little bit of a different purpose depending on the type of show you're on.
You have also written screenplays. Talk a little bit about, does it feel lonely after being in a writer's room to then be doing all of your own consultation? Or are you talking to the director? Or?
No, it did not feel lonely at all. My movie, Unicorn Store, which is on Netflix, it's a Netflix original. That was so literally the most fun experience ever because I had only worked in TV up till then. And it is very collaborative. And I am getting to write like an episode here and an episode there. But the showrunner gets the final pass on all scripts, right? So they can change your lines as they should. Like it's their vision, they're changing it to fit in. It depends on the show. Sometimes you get more of your original script in there, and sometimes your whole script could be rewritten heavily. It still says written by Samantha McIntyre up on the TV, but you and all other TV writers know that the showrunner perhaps rewrote a lot of it. Again, some shows heavily rewrite and some do not. But at that point, I feel like I had definitely been rewritten a lot, and it never really felt like mine. So when I wrote Unicorn Store, and it was an indie film and it was independently financed, so we didn't have like a big studio telling us, do this, do that. We were literally filming my script. Like nobody was like rewriting my words. Now, did the awesome actors improv a lot? Yes, they did, but usually for the better. Like they would be hilarious. Like Bradley Whitford barely could keep to the words in the script, and I literally did not care because everything that came out of his mouth was so hilarious and so funny, and so he gets a pass. It was very rewarding, very fun to be like, wow, I wrote this thing, and now I'm like watching people say the words I wrote, and there's like a cool set over here that somebody built, and like the movie magic of all of that was so fun for me. And yeah, I was on set every day and mostly there just to like be there as a source if people had questions or if like actors wanted to talk to me. And our director was very collaborative and was very cool with me being there, which is also something you don't necessarily get in feature films. Writers have way more power in TV than they do in movies. You could sell a big movie and they never want to see you again.
Oh, really?
You might not be welcome on the set. They might not want you there. They don't have to let you there. They paid you whatever they paid you for this movie, and now they're making the movie. Goodbye. But I had a very positive experience. And part of it, I do think is because it was an indie film and it was low budget and everybody involved was really excited and really wanted to be there and really believed in the thing. And we had a lot of women on our crew and it was just like good vibes. And so I feel lucky that I had a very positive first feature experience, because if anyone's interested in this topic and you listen to screenwriting podcasts or read about different writers' experiences, like some people have real nightmare experiences. So I did not, thankfully.
I only put it together. Wasn't Bradley Whitford on the show that Wade and Aaron?
Oh, yeah, he was. The Good Guys.
Good Guys. Is that how you met him? Or
there is a slight connection because Wade, my husband, had worked on this comedy cop show called The Good Guys and obviously worked with Bradley on that. And we were having a hard time coming up with an actor for that part in Unicorn Store. And I think that Wade suggested, like, what about Bradley Whitford? And I think I texted Brie, Larson, our director, and said, what about Bradley Whitford? And then wheels started turning and he agreed to do it. I don't even know if he remembered me. I mean, I talked to him on set. I was like, my husband, Wade, worked with you on The Good Guys. And we ran into each other a few times in like the airport because it filmed in Dallas, which is where The Good Guys filmed in Dallas, which is where Wade and I both grew up. So we would like see, and Wade would go back and forth to Dallas, and we would see Bradley like in the Burbank airport. That was like a fun reunion of sorts, even if he barely remembered me.
that's still pretty cool. When you were starting, how did you manage nerves? Did you get nervous? Did you have any feelings of imposter syndrome? I mean, you had been an actor in your heart. So we know how to manage it and kind of fake it. Just going to act like I'm a TV writer. Did you feel nervous, and how did you manage that?
It's so hard for me to remember like my first,
so long ago.
Yeah, in 1884. No, like my first TV job was 2006. And there was definitely imposter syndrome because it happened so quickly that I was staffed on a show. Like I was literally an aspiring actor, auditioning actor. That was my whole focus. And I kind of decided a little bit on a whim to see if I could break into television writing. I liked writing a lot in high school, and I'd been on the school newspaper, and I'd written a little one-act play in college that got made, like a little student-run film theater festival thing we did, but it never had occurred to me as a job, like a Hollywood job. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to try to write a spec script, which is a script you write of an existing show, but like your own episode idea of it. This was 2006. So the American Office had just come out the year before, I think in 2005. And I was like, I'm going to write my own episode of The Office, like my idea for The Office. And I love the way it turned out. And I decided to enter it into this program that Warner Brothers has. It's sad. I don't know if it still exists or if they're in the midst of retooling it. You could give it a Google, but it's called the Warner Brothers Writers Workshop. They had a comedy workshop and a drama workshop. And I applied for the comedy workshop, and they selected like 10 scripts, and mine got chosen. And so I got into this program, and the goal of the program was to teach people about how to be in a TV writer's room. And when the program ended, Warner Brothers would attempt to get you staffed on a Warner Brothers show, and they would essentially pay for your salary. So like it wouldn't come out of the budget of the show. It would come from the Warner Brothers program. That way the show would be incentivized to try out a new person, and they're not like losing money on you if you suck. This program was, I don't know, a few months, 12 weeks long or something like that. Wrote a new spec in the midst of that program, and that spec got me staffed on a Warner Brothers sitcom. And so that whole thing was like this weird whirlwind half a year of me being like, should I try TV writing, to like, you're a writer on a TV show. I literally didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I barely been on like sets before, like maybe for like a commercial I'd filmed, but not like a TV show. The first day I'm in the writer's room, and it's a big room. I don't even remember now, 13, 14 people. There were a couple other first-time staff writers, so I wasn't the only new person starting day one. But everybody else was coming from like huge shows. Like they'd been on Frasier, and they'd been on Just Shoot Me, and like every sitcom that I had watched, like in the 80s or 90s, like these people had been on those shows. The coolest thing ever was the showrunner of that show, the late Marsh McCall, who was an incredible first-time boss. He said to me on the first day, talk as little as you want or as much as you want. He was like, if you want to just like sit and listen and kind of like soak it up, but like also if you have an idea and you want to share the idea, like feel free to pitch. He was like, I don't want you to feel like stressed out by this. And that was like the coolest thing someone could have said to me on like my first day, of feeling like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I don't know what happens in a writer's room. How does it work? Are we all talking at once? There's so many of us in here. How will I know if it's okay for me to talk? So for him in the first minute to be like, don't worry about talking, like do it or don't do it, and just kind of get your feet wet. And that was such a great thing. And then the people in the room were really cool. In 2006, like there weren't so many women in comedy writers' rooms. It was me and one other woman, and she was more experienced. She'd been on a bunch of shows. Sometimes you will hear horror stories, not horror, but maybe like toxic, not fun stories from women who are in comedy rooms feeling like they're being ignored or not being listened to, or like everyone's cracking really crass jokes at your expense. I might have been nervous about that, but then that wasn't the case for me. Every person in this room was so lovely. I feel like they thought it was cool that it was like first day, first show, didn't know anything, like people like being a teacher. But I just lucked out because it was like super kind environment. And so I think, that helped build up my confidence. And then when I got to write one episode of our season of that show, and it was a sitcom that got canceled pretty quickly. It was called 20 Good Years with John Lithgow and Jeffrey Tambor. And the fun thing about the multicam sitcoms that film in front of a live audience is you're doing like a table read every week. So and then if you're the writer, like you're sitting at the table. So like I'm sitting at the table with John Lithgow, and
Oh my God.
he's gonna read my first script of TV that I've ever written in my life. And of course, a lot of it has been rewritten by the room because the room is pitching jokes and the showrunner's like, oh, that's good. And we're putting that in the script. And then the showrunner himself is rewriting stuff. So it was very collaborative. It's not like, oh, I wrote every word of this, but I wrote the first draft and it had my name on it. I remember doing the table read and, everyone claps when it's over and the writers are leaving because we're going to like take our golf cart back to like our office. And as we were leaving, John Lithgow opened the door and like came down a couple steps, waving the script in the air. And he was like, Samantha, it's like a play. And I died. Just him, he was excited about it or he liked it and or he was just being very kind to like a young first time staff writer. But like, I will remember that my whole life that he said that to me. And especially because I had a theater background and I did go like to grad school for like acting and theater, for him to say, it's like a play. It just felt like the best compliment ever.
Oh,
that was a great day.
Cool. Oh my God. So you mentioned at that time, there were not a lot of female writers in the rooms. Has that changed?
Yes, I think so. I think if you look at published statistics, there's still more work to be done. I don't think we've like achieved perfect gender equality, but I think the numbers are trending better for women in the writer's room. And part of that is a little bit, they know they will be, you will be shamed if someone attempted to hire an all male writer's room and that got out on the internet. Like there's a little bit of like, obviously, depending on what the show's about, you're going to want a female perspective. I mean, this honestly, a more diverse writer's room and diversity in every way, background and economics and race and just a variety of life experiences on every show is going to make that show better. And I think that idea has seeped in a little bit more over the years. Like, I think it would be pretty rare to be like the only woman on a show right now, but there's still work to be doing. And I do worry that the diversity is starting to slide. People are a little, I don't know what the word is. We're not trying as hard as we were trying in 2020. It's just always something that we could be improving on.
Yeah. One question I asked for a different episode that was really focused on how women communicate in fields that are predominantly male. Is there any time where you felt like you had to kind of change the way you communicate to fit in or to be heard?
Well, I don't have any scientific evidence to base this on, but I do feel in my heart that women writers, I think we might need to know more when we're pitching to sell a show. And I don't know if that's like there's an unconscious bias towards male showrunners that they know what they're doing. I think especially this is more a thing the younger you look and the younger you are. I'm getting up there. So maybe people believe I know what I'm doing a little bit more, but especially like a younger looking woman, you just really have to know your stuff because there's a part of them that this is obviously a blanket statement I'm making. It's not going to be true for everybody, but there's a little bit of like, you need to really prove that you can do this, that you know the show, that you have a plan, that you can execute it. You'll read a lot of stories about like a young showrunner, never sold anything before. He sells a show and they let him showrun. They let him be the showrunner. Female writers, there's not as many of those tales that a young writer sells a show and they let her be the showrunner. There's usually of a feeling of like, we should pair you with someone that's like done this before. Again, a lot of this is like anecdotal. I don't know the actual statistics on this, but part of it is because like I have a friend who I think is incredible. He's a great writer and he has joked about pitching stuff where it's very loose. He has like a loose idea. And honestly, this person is qualified to pull it off, but like has sold ideas based on like very little. Whereas I feel like I don't have that runway. I feel like I have to go in knowing the answer to every question they're going to ask. I need to have thought about this entire season, not just the pilot. I need to have ideas for season 2, maybe season 3. I need to have done so much more work. Part of that is just so that you have the confidence. I'm going to look super confident. If I have all the info, I at least will come across super confident, and they're not going to be questioning, do I need to pair her with another showrunner, or could she really do this herself? The question almost, I feel like the answer is almost yes, she could do it herself, because there are so many examples of men who have done it themselves for the first time. And literally, what is the difference here?
Yeah.
So I do think that women, hopefully they won't need to have worked twice as hard, but I think they should be. It's sad that I say that, but I feel like you should be going into that pitch twice as prepared. If it for any other reason than just to give yourself the confidence that I fought through all of it. And so I feel confident that I'm going to answer any question, or I'm at least to be able to fake it, which we talked about a little earlier. Like, yes, they might ask you a question you have no clue on, but if you can sort of fake it or even answer with good humor that, oh my God, I never thought about that. That's so funny. Yeah, we should do something with that. Just showing that you're not flustered by it. If they ask you something that you don't know how to handle the answer, then they're wondering, could she handle running an entire TV show where you're going to be dealing with like the studio and the network and casting and producing, and you're going to be making a million decisions a day. So you want to show them in the pitch that you can make quick decisions, that it's crazy that much you're putting that much pressure on it, that much on the line. But it's true. Like, you, from day one, you have to give off this vibe of like, I know what I'm doing. And I absolutely have ruined some experiences for myself for not doing this. Like, I got paid to write like a big movie that I was really excited about. They had already hired and fired a bunch of other writers before me because this was big intellectual property. And so I knew when I got hired to write a draft, I even said to my agent, I'm probably going to be fired off of this too. Like, I'm going to write my version, turn it in, and they're going to be like, nope, move on to writer number 9 or move on to writer number 10. And that is exactly what happened. I mean, I did get paid to write it, so that was great. But when I look back on that experience, I absolutely know that I was not exuding confidence. Like, I'd be sitting in like a big boardroom with like the director who was attached and like all the producers that were attached. And it's almost, I was a little too quiet. I was a little like, because I think I was used to being in like the writer's room where I'm in the lower end. At the time, I was at the lower end of that hierarchy, and maybe I'm not talking as much, or like I'm not in charge of this project. And when I look back on it, I realize like I should have been the voice of the vision of this whole thing. Like, I should have been taking control of this room. Maybe they still would have thrown out the script and gone like a whole other way, but that's one of those things that like eats at me a little bit. When I like think about missed opportunities, I'm like, oh, maybe if I had just acted like I knew what I was doing, which I did not know what I was doing, to be clear. I didn't know then that I needed to fake it as much as I know that now.
Do you ever get nervous doing these pitches anymore?
I get nervous right before join this Zoom moment.
Your belly drops.
Yeah, like nervous. But then I will say the actual performing is how I think of it is so fun to me, because I am, like a frustrated actor. So getting to perform the script of the pitch that I have written, the shows are comedy shows. So I try to make the pitch as funny as I can. Like, there's usually like little bits in there, little jokes in there. And so for me, that's so fun. Now, it's weirder over Zoom because in the old days, if I was pitching in a room full of people, I would be getting feedback. People would be laughing and you'd be like, oh, this is going great. And they might interject even in the middle to like say something funny, and you could say something funny back and then keep going from where you left off. But on a Zoom, most people, so that they don't mess you up and just to be respectful of your process, everyone's muting themselves. Oh. And so you're not like, I could usually tell, at least I'm looking at their face. I'm glancing from my script to their faces every now and then to see. And like, it's very helpful when you'll see people smiling or nodding, or you can tell that they're laughing even though they're muted. But then sometimes you are literally reading to just deadpan faces. And I've learned that that means nothing. They could be no reaction, and your agent is like, they love it and they're going to make you an offer. And you would be like stunned because everybody looked like they were bored and they were on their phones. Or they could be laughing it up and cracking up and smiling and saying, "You're so wonderful. We love you. We love this pitch." And they pass and they do not make an offer. Knowing that, it makes no sense and you cannot predict it. I'm not really looking at their faces too much. I'm trying to kind of look at my script and look at the camera.
Do you think about, if you're thinking about, I have to come in and seem very confident, are there physical things that you focus on? Like we talk about owning your space, especially as women, we tend to make ourselves kind of tiny or small and we'll close off. Is that something that you think about, or is that just something that's so ingrained in you from acting days that you don't really think about that?
I do think a little bit about how I'm framing myself on Zoom.
Uh-huh.
The best pitch in the world is going to be in person, I believe. And in those situations, I would usually be sitting in an office, like in a chair or couch opposite someone else in a chair or couch. And I wouldn't be behind a desk. It would be very like casual, like we're on a date and we're talking. Because that can't happen, I like to be like where you can see like pretty much my face, just the top of my shoulders, but it's pretty close up. And this is way better for a pitch because it's more like I'm as close as I can get to them on their side. I think, and I'm going to back up and this will not be helpful, but like if I'm like leaning all the way back and I'm like pitching a show and I'm back here, I think this is not as good. So I do like to be like physically, I'm usually sitting on a couch. I have kind of like a TV tray. To me, the couch is more comfortable. So I'm going to be more relaxed. And I'm just a very casual person. Like I'm probably wearing a t-shirt for most of these pitches, like I am right now. And so I'm in a t-shirt and I am on a couch and I'm very comfortable. And my face is pretty close to the camera, like in a pretty tight close-up situation.
Yeah. And you mentioned looking at the camera, which is a technique I try to encourage people to use.
I do try, but I'm so obsessed with looking at myself. And I know that is a problem.
Seriously?
Like I can't help it. I know you can turn that off. And I tried it once and it was worse. I spent the whole pitch worried what I looked like when I couldn't see my face. Even now, like I'm talking to Jenni through the Zoom and like sometimes I'm looking at Jenni, sometimes I'm looking at myself. I'm not really looking at the camera at all. So I don't know if it looks like I'm looking down. I'm mostly looking at your face, but I'm checking in on my own face, which I don't know why. I'm just insecure about how I look on Zoom.
Well, I think it's probably smart to check in because sometimes you'll peek up and you're like out of frame or you got something on
Yeah.
you, or the eye contact thing, I think is a real challenge that if you're face to face, you're in person, that's easy to know.
Yeah.
If you're a person who's establishing contact and eye contact and you look confident and you're not like shying away from eye contact, it's so hard to do it on Zoom. One of the things I tell people is, look at that camera, at least at the very beginning, where you're kind of establishing this relationship and connection because it feels the most like eye contact. But then I'm kind of like you, I drift. Now I'm looking right at you because I'm always studying the person that I'm talking to. And that's not necessarily the best idea if you're the one presenting.
I think too, I talked a little bit about this when I was talking about reading my script, and I'm trying to present the script as if these thoughts are just naturally coming to me in
Yes.
this moment. I'm just improving all the brilliant things I'm saying. In real life, if we were talking back and forth like this, you would have moments where you would be like looking up, looking out, looking away. You don't necessarily like drill into people's eyes and just like death stare them in conversation. So
That's creepy.
so I do try to do that on Zoom a little bit too. I will try to sort of like look up at the ceiling fan, but usually it's part of the script, the part where I'm like pretending to search for the perfect word and I'm like looking up and looking around because I don't know, I just feel like it's uncomfortable to be like laser eyeing somebody straight in the face, but
Yeah, because we don't do that in person.
no.
The only person I've heard who does that is Elizabeth Holmes.
Oh,
And apparently that was used as a strategy because people couldn't look away.
Oh, like she knew she was doing it. She did it on
locking in.
purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's
Keeping them
weird.
there. It's creepy.
I think it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too much. It's, yeah.
I love pitching. I think it's like, once I've reached that point, all the hard work is done. So, like, the hardest part is coming up with the idea and writing it all out and setting up the meetings I'm going to be having. Like, all of that is the hard stuff. The fun part is like, I get to share this thing. And I also try to think to myself that I'm not just hoping for people to pick me, I'm looking for people that I want to work with. Like I said, I might pitch to multiple people. The, and if multiple people want to do it, I have the power of deciding which of those people I want to work with. And I feel like that takes a little bit of the pressure off of the desperation. I don't have the like, please pick me, please. You never want to feel like this is your only shot in life. One meeting is your only shot in life. That is a really bad feeling to have. And if it doesn't go perfectly, you're going to feel really bad about yourself. So I think of it as like, oh, if I'm going to pitch this to 8 production companies, I have like 8 opportunities to give my whole performance, which at this point is hopefully 20 minutes and super fun and super interesting. And each one is going to get better because I'm going to remember the questions that the first person asked and add that to my list of questions that I've prepared. So probably by the time I do the 8th one, that's going to be like the best one I've ever done. And you almost get excited when they ask the question that you've answered it now in a bunch of previous pitches, and everyone's asking it. When they ask it, you're like, oh my God, yes, great, perfect question. And then you have like a brilliant, quick answer, and they're like, wow, she really knows her stuff. She's really thought this through. So even getting to do it a bunch of times is like so helpful. And in fact, I would rather do the places I'm pitching that I'm most interested in. I will definitely want those near the end.
Oh, interesting. Because that gives you time to work out your shtick. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I want you to teach a class to business people because it's a different kind of thing. You know, they're selling a product that somebody else has created, I guess, and you have a lot of ownership. But I feel like if they could think through all those questions, anticipate, feel a sort of ownership of the product, then they could look at it in that same way of like, I'm excited to tell you about this because it's going to make your life so much better.
That's interesting. I sometimes think about that when I watch like Shark Tank. A lot of times the beginning of their pitch is usually their personal story, their personal tie to why they're created this thing and why the world needs it. And that is 100% how a TV pitch starts. A TV pitch is usually like me telling a story about my teenage daughter, and she came home one day and she said this, and that really got me thinking about this idea. And then now it's like it's a whole TV show. But you're usually starting with like the thing that made you think of this idea or why you think the world needs this right now. Like we need hope more than we've ever needed hope. And I want to write this show about hope, but that's going to make people laugh, and it's going to make people feel hopeful, and it's going to make you feel this and make you feel that. And so you're always starting with that personal story. And I've noticed that they do that on Shark Tank, you know?
Yeah, really smart. Makes it feel like there's a real connection. And yeah, obviously there's something they created, much like a writer. You know, if you're selling insurance, I don't know, that's a little harder.
Yeah. I feel like, sometimes somebody might have like an inventor personality where they're like, ooh, what could I sell to make a bunch of money? And that could work. I'm not saying it's a bad way to approach things, but even with TV writing, like it's hard when you're chasing the thing you think is hot, but it's not coming from your heart or your passion. If you think like everybody's TV cop shows are so hot, everybody wants cop shows. I don't have one, but I should just come up with a cop show. I truly think that pitch, if I made myself come up with a cop show, that's not really what I do. That's not like my type of writing usually. That it just wouldn't turn out as well. Whereas if I'm writing a show about this like shape-shifting alien and this girl who works at IKEA and they decide to work together to save the earth, like that is right up my alley. And I could talk about it forever and could convince you why the world needs this show about this certain thing. And so, yeah, that's just the have your heart in it aspect of it all.
This has been so fun. It's fun to get to interview someone that you also are friends with because we don't really talk about our jobs that much.
No,
Like,
we don't.
how does it work day to day? So this has been fascinating. And your world is so terrifying to me to have to go out there and like sell a story I came up with. It's so personal and so it's really impressive.
I feel like it sounds more impressive than it is. And the parts that I'm not saying, not talking that much about, is the staggering amount of rejection. You could work on a pitch and it takes forever to schedule all of the pitch meetings, and you're pitching all these production companies. And if that goes well, you're pitching to the studio and then you're pitching to the network. This whole process might take 6 months, sometimes longer. And then it could be dead. It could be nobody buys it and it's done. And you were working on this thing for 6 months and you were not paid. The production companies you're working with, those people are getting salaries, and the studio people you're pitching to, they are on salary. The only person not getting paid in this entire process, unless it sells at the end, is the writer. So it's a lot of work you're doing on your own, hoping for an outcome. And much like working actors, you're going to audition for 100 things and hope you get one of them. It's really tough because there's so much not working. There's so much not selling. There's a lot of sitting around waiting to hear if you pitch something and Amazon calls you a month later to say that they want it or they passed. So there's a lot of sitting around. And that's a little bit why you can't have all your eggs in one basket. You can't be like, I have this one idea and I'm going to give everything in my heart to this one idea and just hope it sells. Because if at the end of 6 months it didn't sell, you have nothing. You have to have 4 things you're working on. Like, I'm writing a movie. I'm writing my own pilot that I'm not going to pitch. I'm just writing the script myself, which I'll then send out and see if anyone wants to buy. And then I'm working on like 3 different pitches right now for 3 different producers. And the hope is like one of these happens. But I'm not getting paid for any of it as I'm like working on when I'm at the point that I'm working on the idea.
Do you have a different routine for yourself if you get a no? And then do you have a routine for when you get a yes? Like, do you celebrate? Do you treat yourself to something?
The no's are so common. So no, I mean, that's just general disappointment. Like, I guess, okay, on to the next thing. Because like I said, hopefully you have a bunch of things in the works so you don't feel like your whole identity and your whole life was wrapped up with that one no. So hopefully you're like, oh, that one's not going to go. Okay, we'll move on to this one. But the yeses are huge, yes. And you want to celebrate. Like, selling a pilot is a really big deal and it's really cool. And I usually will buy myself something, but not like something crazy. Like, I'll buy a pair of sneakers or something, but it's kind of like I want in my head, like, oh, you sold this thing, so your reward is you get these Nikes. But I'm not like going out and buying a car. It's funny because there is so much unemployment. When you work as a writer, you make amazing money, and then there's a lot of unemployment. And so you're just always saving your money. Every time you make it, you're saving it to pay for the times where you're not working. So I can't even imagine, like, you read somebody sells a movie, in deadline.com, they sell a movie $1 million or $2 million. I would never go out and like buy a car or buy a house, or like, I would never blow that check, because in my mind, I would be like, oh, that's a few years of living.
If I don't, the last time I ever work.
Yes. If this is the last time I ever work, I need this to last as long as possible. So I will not be buying myself a Cybertruck.
Thank you so much for spending time with me. It's great to get to catch up and hear about your incredibly fascinating work. It's just, it's beyond me, but I'm so glad there are people like you in the world to create fun things to give us hope and joy.
Aw. Well, it was fun to talk to you. I forget, like, this is kind of my ho-hum 9 to 5. So it's fun to like hear your questions and realize like, oh yeah, this isn't like normal.
Yeah, not everybody
Maybe
uses-
this is not a normal job.
Thanks so much for joining me on Speaking of Talking. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a review, share it with a friend, or send it to someone who geeks out on voice just as much as we do. For more tips, tools, and behind-the-scenes goodies, head to the show notes or visit us at jennisteck.com. I'm Jenni Steck. And remember, your voice isn't just how you sound, it's how you show up. Own it, trust it. And let's keep talking, because we've got a lot to say.